Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 35th episode of the Startup Boston podcast, where I interview entrepreneurs, investors, and influencers in the Boston startup community to uncover actionable advice and stories from their experiences. I'm your host, Nick Dupuis. Big thank you to David Delmar, founder at Resilient Coders, who you can listen to in episode 34, for introducing me to today's guest. And today's guest is Liz Powers, co-founder and chief happiness spreader at ArtLifting. Liz Powers co-founded ArtLifting with her brother after creating art groups in homeless shelters and seeing amazing works of art produced, only to end up in basements and closets of shelters. ArtLifting empowers artists living with homelessness and disabilities through the sale of their artwork. A few things Liz talks about in this episode are the differences between handouts and opportunities, why she didn't want to start ArtLifting as a nonprofit, how she was able to bootstrap through the first few years, and the biggest lesson she's learned running her own business. If you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes so you can get all of the new episodes as soon as they're released right on your podcast app. And as always, you can find today's show notes at startupbostonpodcast.com, and you can reach me at nic@startupbostonpodcast.com. Enjoy today's episode. Liz, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
To get us rolling here, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and ArtLifting?
Yeah, so my name is Liz Powers. I'm the co-founder and chief happiness spreader at ArtLifting. So ArtLifting helps artists who are experiencing homelessness and disabilities sell their artwork.
So why did you start ArtLifting, and how did you come up with the idea for it and the need for it?
So I've been working with homeless individuals for the last 10 years. So to start, I was doing casework, working one-on-one to help get jobs and housing and food resources. And tons of my clients said that they were really lonely. And, that's not shocking when you have a million overwhelming things on your shoulders at once. So I thought, okay, well, I've been an artist my whole life, and I'm hearing in these one-on-ones people are lonely. How about I start art groups to come together and support one another? So I did that as my full-time job in local shelters and learned really quickly that it wasn't just, raw talent in the art groups where I was, but there's over 1,000 existing art groups in shelters and social service agencies all across the country that even as a caseworker I didn't know about. So a normal person who wasn't in the fields really was unaware. So then transitioned to create this missing marketplace to curate top artwork from these existing art groups and share it with corporations and individual consumers.
I read that you said you're interested in creating opportunities and not handouts. So can you tell us more about that?
Totally, yeah. So over the last 10 years, I've heard repeatedly, Liz, I don't want a handout. I want an opportunity. That, really resonated with me because no one wants to be a charity case. Everyone wants to contribute. But a big problem that I've noticed over the last 10 years is, whether if you have mental health challenges or face disabilities or whatnot, a lot of things prevent people from being part of the economy and being part of the current workforce as it's defined, a 9-to-5 job. But that doesn't mean, I think of it as the unseen economy of all of these talents out there that are hidden, that could be part of a quote-unquote job if we think about the definition of job more broadly. So I see ArtLifting as a starting point there as, okay, my background was art, and I saw this hidden talent. Why don't we infuse this into the workforce? But there's so many other hidden talents out there as well, like music or woodworking or food preparation. And I could see this becoming a movement of music lifting or wood lifting or food lifting.
How do you source your artists and the artwork that they produce?
So we work with existing art groups, as I was mentioning. So it's really important to us that our artists have a support network around them. So we work with these existing art groups and then curate the top artwork and then sell art prints and products with the artwork on it.
Okay. How do you then come up with, say, the pricing for the original pieces?
So there's a two-part pricing process. So first we have contracts with all of our artists. and our artists say, okay, I want at least X amount from this piece of artwork. We work like a normal gallery. So galleries typically do a 50-50 split. We're similar to that in that artists earn 55% of the profit. So if an artist says, okay, I want $500 for this piece, then we sell it for at least $1,000.
Okay.
The second part of the pricing is we found that artists tend to undervalue their work. A lot of times because of the situations where they come from. So our curator comes in and says, this is the correct market value. So our average sale price for an original is in the $2,000 range, but we've sold originals for as much as $25,000.
How many artists do you currently sell artwork for? And how many different cities are you working in?
Yeah, we work with 100 artists right now in 17 states nationwide.
Okay. Which one is Boston your most popular one in terms of the number of artists that you have?
Yeah, we have, since we started out of Boston, of course, that's where our biggest artist base is, because we have the longest sample size in terms of years to have been here. That being said, we have a growing base in San Francisco, also New York, and 15 other states across the country.
What are some of your different sales channels?
So we have 3 sales channels. So one is corporate sales, selling in bulk to corporations, whether it's art prints or co-branded notebooks with our artwork or employee gifts. The second sales channel is licensing, the concept of an existing brand printing our artwork on their product. So we've closed 5 licensing deals so far, including Starbucks did limited edition gift cards with our artwork printed on them. We have a deal with a glasses company called Thin Optics that prints our art on the rims of the glasses and the cases. And we actually just launched with Costco this week, doing posters with them.
On Instagram, I follow Parlor Skis, and I saw that Alan Chamberlain, I think, has his artwork on their skis now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so, and Alan has never skied before. So we were actually in the shop today, and he was seeing his artwork printed on skis.
Oh, nice.
He couldn't get over
That's cool. What are some of your favorite success stories of the different artists?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. Several of our artists have actually gained housing. Certainly not just because of the money they've earned, but the bigger thing is the confidence boost. Of all of a sudden, instead of being defined by the negative of you don't have housing or you're in a wheelchair or whatnot, they're being defined by the positive of you are so talented, you created this. And then there's this domino effect of having all this energy to do housing applications or apply to jobs or whatnot. One particular story is an artist named Scott Benner. So he had worked his whole life as a steel worker and operated heavy equipment, and during the recession lost his job, like many people. He applied to 1 million jobs but wasn't having any luck. And then what he calls the perfect storm happened. He ended up getting diagnosed with Horner syndrome, which is a rare disease that makes you really randomly dizzy and confused. So he could obviously no longer operate heavy equipment anymore. Right. And it was hard to restart your career at that point in your life after decades. And a few months later, his wife got cancer. So all of a sudden, both of them had big medical bills. They were both unemployed. And long story short, they went through their life savings of, it was over $100,000, balancing out these tough times, and he ended up homeless. And he was sleeping under the bushes, actually, by Quincy, Mass train station, and once it got cold, went into a shelter. But he had always been an artist his whole life. But that being said, no one other than really close family members had seen his work because he just did it as therapy and for fun. So he saw us on the news and ended up, that was a few years ago now, and has sold his work with us for as much as $25,000 for an original. Wow. But also to companies like Google had a big feature with him, or licensing deal with a mattress company called Lisa, where his artwork is sewn into mattresses, which is something I could have never dreamed of. Yeah. And he couldn't have either.
Tell me about why you wanted to start ArtLifting not as a non-profit.
Yeah, I get that question a lot. Whenever people hear that we have a social mission, they assume we're a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. I'm really proud that we're a for-profit, for-purpose company for two reasons. One is going back to that quote of, Liz, I don't want a handout. I want an opportunity. I thought, okay, well, why should we reinvent the wheel? Why don't we just operate like existing galleries that are for-profits? And the second piece was, okay, well, I've been in the nonprofit world before ArtLifting for 8 years. And there were a lot of times where I just felt like banging my head against the wall of they're just unbelievable inefficiencies. For example, when I was running art groups in shelters, one grant that I applied to was 14 pages long. So I filled it out and it was for $5,000. And from when I applied to when I received that $5,000 check, it was a year. Wow. And in the meantime, I had women in the art groups looking at me and needing art supplies. So, I was scrappy and got them from Craigslist and whatnot. But I felt like, okay, with ArtLifting, if we can scale as a for-profit, treat our artists with the professionalism and dignity they deserve, but also have a much bigger impact because we can grow at a faster pace if we don't need to rely on this existing grant system. So that's been a big reason why we've been able to scale our impact so quickly.
Do you think that the artists would have seen it as a handout if you were a nonprofit instead of for-profit?
Not necessarily. There's so many great nonprofits out there, and many of them are revenue generating. Mm-hmm. But I felt like the two pieces together made me steer towards the for-profit angle. Yeah.
Now you bootstrapped through your first few years, right?
We did, yeah.
What was that like? How did you do that?
It was funny. So my brother and I started with just $4,000 of our savings and bootstrapped to revenue in the six figures. A big reason why we were able to survive so long without salaries is, so I was actually working in a Harvard dorm, and my job was to throw tea parties. I'm not kidding. Like home-baked pastries and, tea and everything. But in exchange...
In the dorm?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So in exchange, I got free room and board.
Okay.
So for the first 2 years of ArtLifting, I was able to get by without a salary, just coaching sailing on weekends for cash and bootstrapping our way there.
Wow. When did you first get your first investment?
So we ended up getting investment of $1.3 million as a pre-seed in July of 2015.
Okay.
So that was a couple years after, starting with the idea. Yeah.
How are you able to continue to grow without spending on marketing? Great
question. Our artist stories in particular are so compelling that we've been picked up in the press a lot. For example, we had inbound from the Today Show and had a 3-minute segment where we were on the cover of the New York Times business section. So overall, it's been about 100 press pieces, and each of those has led to inbound sales.
What was the biggest lesson you learned running or starting your own business?
The biggest lesson I've learned is focus. It's been a fun challenge of, every time in the shower or laying in bed, I have a new idea for ArtLifting. But I've learned over time to discipline myself and say, okay, you can't do everything at once. Let's do a tiered approach of we're going to test these ideas for the business this month. And then that's a great idea I just had in the shower, but we're not even allowed to test it for 6 months.
So you set these rules for yourself. Is that to help yourself not stray too far and just go in too many directions? Is it, like you said, that'll keep you focused?
Exactly. And, I think we've been able to, we had revenue in the 6 figures last year, for example, and grew 6x. And we're able to grow like that because of focus. We need to continue to stay focused in the future.
Where did the title of Cheap Happiness Spreader come from?
So my brother came up with that title. In the early days when it was just us, he was the chief boring stuff doer, and I was the cheap happiness spreader.
Nice. What resources were most helpful to you in the early days of starting ArtLifting?
We started ArtLifting out of the Harvard Innovation Lab and then moved to MassChallenge and then moved to another startup accelerator called ScaleUp. All 3 of those accelerators were real game changers for us because they had a whole group of mentors around there who could who had made these same mistakes in the past and could help us get through them, but also had the really strong networks of, helping us get this big corporate deal or get this free marketing advice.
Mm-hmm. Why did you take place in so many accelerators?
I had no business experience.
Okay.
So that was one reason. But another was just being surrounded by peers, fellow entrepreneurs who, even if someone had a biotech company, which is very different than ArtLifting's core mission, but we both had to figure out a lot of the same things of how do you set up payroll or how can you get free legal advice. So surrounding ourselves with those resources was key to being able to bootstrap.
What were some of the different goals that you had going into each of the different accelerators?
The Harvard Innovation Lab, we were just starting, so testing the idea and being super aware of what hypotheses we had and testing them was a big goal. Going into MassChallenge, we were a bit more mature at that point. We really wanted to leverage the mentors there to be able to scale and start doing corporate sales. Mm-hmm. And ScaleUp was after we had closed the 1.3 million seed round. So a lot of it was working with professors from Harvard Business School or from Dartmouth to be able to think about, scaling over time.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to take part in an accelerator program?
Almost hands down, go for it. The one thing you have to be very cautious of before going for it is, I need to be really careful of my time. And there's an abundance of resources at all of these accelerators. So that was something I had to learn over time of, you can't get advice 100% of the time because then you have no time to actually do things and implement them. Yeah. So just being, very careful and segmenting, a quarter of my time or 10% of my time I can be getting advice. The rest of the time I need to be acting.
I want to go now into our rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So the first one is, what's another startup in Boston you're most excited about?
Spoiler alert.
What's that?
So there are really smart people out of MIT Sloan. There's this huge problem of food waste all across the country. I don't remember the exact number of pounds, but also there's a huge number of individuals in poverty who are undernourished. So they're trying to solve both of those problems at once.
Okay. What's something about you that most people don't know?
So I got this National Sailing Award. I was the first woman in U.S. sailing history to win the National Sportsmanship Award.
Wow.
So most people don't know that.
How long have you been sailing?
Since I was 8.
What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Business can be a lot of fun and that you don't need to just do social work.
Outside of work, what do you look forward to the most?
I'd like to paint in my free time. I really like TV too.
What do you like to watch?
I love Scandal and Good Wife.
What are your favorite tools that help make your life and work easier?
Google Calendar, I love. I love the app on my phone so I can send invites, out of the office. That's my main one.
Do you have any favorite blogs or books?
Ooh, good question. I'm reading the Wright brothers book right now, which is pretty inspiring about how much they did with so little.
Yeah. So in closing, just a few final questions. Where can people find out more about ArtLifting?
They can find out about ArtLifting at artlifting.com.
Where can people connect with you online?
Through info@artlifting.com.
Okay. And do you have any parting thoughts, advice, or suggestions for the audience?
I say if you're thinking of an idea, don't waste too much time overthinking and overanalyzing. I always think back to lean startup and just launch with your minimum viable product and test it out.
All right. Liz, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. You'll get all my new episodes as soon as they're released right on your podcast app. And if you really liked today's episode, it would mean a lot to me if you could write a review of the podcast as well. Just go to startupbostonpodcast.com/iTunes. And remember, you can find all show notes with links at startupbostonpodcast.com. Until next time, if you have any feedback, ideas for guests, or just want to say hi, you can reach me at nic@startupbostonpodcast.com. Or reach out on Twitter at StartupBossCast. That's Startup BOS Cast. Cheers.